Nina Carter, 22, lived a quiet life in a small seaside town. She worked at a cozy little bakery on the corner of Maple Street, the kind that always smelled of warm bread and vanilla. Every morning, she opened the shop before sunrise, humming softly as she arranged croissants and cinnamon rolls by the window. Her life was peaceful, almost predictable. She went to work, chatted with regular customers, came home, and watched the waves crash against the shore from her small apartment window. It wasn't unhappy, just empty in a quiet way. Then came that Friday morning. Nina woke up with a splitting headache that refused to fade. Reluctantly, she decided to visit the hospital. Room 5, the nurse said. And there he was, Dr. Lucas Wilson. Tall, kind-eyed, with a gentle voice that somehow made the pain less sharp. She didn't know it yet, but that moment would be the start of something beautiful and unforgettable. The hospital smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee, sterile, yet strangely comforting. When Nina walked into room 5, she expected a rushed, cold examination. Instead, she found Dr. Lucas Wilson, calm, warm, and effortlessly charming. He checked her pulse, asked about her stress, and smiled. "You're fine, Miss Carter," he said kindly. "Just a bit overworked. Maybe too many cupcakes." She laughed, embarrassed. Guilty as charged. Their conversation drifted from health to small talk, the sea, the bakery, the weather. When she left, her headache was gone, but her heart was racing. That night, she replayed his words over and over. His smile. His laugh. The way he said her name. A week later, she found herself walking back into that same hospital, wearing her prettiest blue dress. The headache had long vanished, but she had another kind of ache she couldn't explain. When he entered the room, surprise flickered in his eyes, followed by a knowing grin. "Back so soon?" he asked softly. Nina hesitated, then smiled nervously. "Yes. I think something's wrong with my heart." He raised an eyebrow, half teasing. "Oh? Should I check your pulse again?" "Only if you promise not to fix it too fast," she whispered. For a long moment, he just looked at her, and smiled the kind of smile that says something's beginning. When Dr. Wilson entered the room, Nina's courage almost vanished. But she had already come too far to turn back. He smiled warmly. "How's the headache?" She hesitated, twisting her hands together. "Actually, it's gone." "Gone?" he repeated, amused. "Then why are you here?" She looked down, cheeks burning. "Because I wanted to see you again." For a moment, silence hung between them, gentle, uncertain, electric. Then Lucas chuckled softly, leaning against the counter. "You came all this way, just for me?" "Yes," she admitted, barely above a whisper. "And maybe, to ask if you'd like to have coffee sometime." His brows lifted in surprise, then softened into a grin. "Coffee, huh? I suppose that's a doctor's weakness." Nina held her breath. He nodded. "All right. Coffee sounds perfect." That evening, they met at a small cafe near the harbor. The golden light of sunset danced on the water as they sat across from each other, awkward at first, then slowly, comfortably at ease. They talked for hours. About books they loved. About childhood dreams that never came true. About how both of them secretly liked rainy days because they made the world feel quieter. Lucas told her about his father, how losing him last year had changed everything. "I moved here to start over," he said softly. "To feel useful again." Nina listened, eyes full of empathy. "And now?" He smiled. "Now I think I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." They walked along the harbor afterward, the air cool and salty. Nina felt lighter than she had in years. She had told a small lie, but somehow, it had led her to something real. As they said goodbye, Lucas lingered for a moment, his voice low. "You know," he said, smiling, "that might be the sweetest medical lie I've ever heard." Nina laughed, her heart fluttering. "Then I guess I'll have to come up with another one, just to see you again." As he watched her walk away under the streetlights, Lucas whispered to himself, "What a strange, beautiful way for love to begin." Days turned into weeks, and weeks into something softer, something neither of them dared to name at first. What began as coffee after work soon became long walks by the sea, shared laughter over late-night phone calls, and quiet moments that needed no words. Lucas would stop by Nina's bakery every morning, pretending to debate between muffins and croissants but always choosing whatever she handed him. "Doctor's orders," he'd joke. "And what exactly are you prescribing today?" She'd tease. "Smiles," he'd reply. "Yours, preferably." In those small exchanges, love grew quietly, like sunlight creeping through a half-open curtain. One evening, as they were closing the bakery, Lucas lingered by the door. The world outside glowed gold in the fading light. He turned to her and asked softly, "Do you ever regret coming to the hospital that day?" Nina laughed, brushing flour from her apron. "Not for a second. Even if it all started with a lie," he teased. She looked up, her eyes shining. "Especially because of that. Some lies don't hurt, they heal." He smiled, touched by her honesty. From that moment on, they were inseparable. They spent weekends exploring new cafes, getting lost in art galleries, and sitting on park benches just to feed the birds. Every ordinary day with Lucas felt extraordinary to Nina, a reminder that love doesn't need grand gestures. Sometimes it's just someone remembering how you like your coffee. 6 months later, Lucas asked her to meet him at the hospital. When Nina stepped into room 5, her heart raced. It was exactly as it had been that first morning, the same sunlight through the blinds, the same soft hum of distant footsteps. But this time, Lucas was waiting with a ring. He knelt beside her and said with a trembling smile, "You cured my heart, now let me keep yours." Tears filled Nina's eyes. She laughed and cried at once, whispering, "Yes, 1,000 times yes." The nurses who peeked through the doorway later would tell the story for months, about the young doctor who proposed in the same room where love first pretended to be pain. Marriage, as Nina soon learned, wasn't a fairy tale, but it was theirs. There were long nights, missed dinners, and mornings when the alarm rang too early. Lucas often left before sunrise, his white coat fluttering behind him as he rushed to the hospital. Nina watched him from the window, her heart filled with both pride and longing. Her bakery grew busier, filled with the scent of cinnamon and laughter from loyal customers. Still, she saved the best pastries for Lucas. Some nights, she'd wait for him with a candle lit and a plate of croissants that had long gone cold. When he finally returned, exhausted but smiling, he'd say, "You stayed up again?" She'd shrug gently, always. "Someone has to make sure the doctor eats." They didn't have much time together, but they made every moment count. A shared cup of tea, a slow dance in the kitchen, quiet laughter beneath the glow of the porch light. One Sunday evening, they sat outside watching the sunset fade into pink and gold. Nina leaned her head on his shoulder and whispered, "Do you think we'll still love each other when we're old?" Lucas squeezed her hand. "If love brought you to a hospital pretending to be sick," he said with a grin, "I think it can handle a few wrinkles." She laughed softly, the kind of laugh that came from the heart, not loud, not fleeting, but full. That night, as the stars blinked awake, Nina thought about how love had changed her life. Not with fireworks or drama, but with the quiet certainty that she had found her forever. Love, she realized, wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up, tired, busy, but together. Years slipped by like pages in a book neither of them wanted to end. Nina's bakery, the 5th room, became a local favorite. A warm little haven filled with the smell of vanilla, laughter, and love stories whispered over coffee. She hung a small sign above the counter that read, "Where sweet things begin." Every customer who asked about it got the same smile and answer, "It's a long story, but it started with a lie and a doctor." Meanwhile, Lucas continued to heal people, body and soul. Patients said he had the kind of kindness that couldn't be taught. The kind that came from loving deeply and being loved in return. Their home was simple but full of warmth, half covered in books, the other half in the scent of fresh pastries. They didn't travel much, didn't chase grand adventures. Their joy was in the everyday. Shared breakfasts before dawn, Sunday walks by the sea, the way Lucas still kissed Nina's forehead before leaving for work. On their 10th anniversary, Lucas came home holding a small, velvet box. Nina raised an eyebrow. "If that's another necklace, I swear." He smiled, opening it to reveal a silver stethoscope engraved with delicate words. For the girl who made my heart race. Nina laughed, her eyes soft. You're still terrible at flirting. And you, Lucas said, pulling her close, still lie about headaches. They both laughed, remembering the day their story began. A nervous girl, a charming doctor, and a heartbeat that refused to calm down. Their love wasn't loud anymore. It didn't need to be. It lived in the quiet, in every cup of coffee he poured for her before work, in every pastry she saved for him after long nights at the hospital, in the shared silences that felt like home. One evening, as they sat outside watching the sunset bleed into the horizon, Nina whispered, "Do you ever miss the excitement of falling in love?" Lucas looked at her, his eyes gentle. "Falling in love was wonderful," he said, "but staying in love with you, that's the real miracle." And in that moment, Nina realized something simple but true. Love doesn't always need to be new to be beautiful. Sometimes, the most extraordinary thing is choosing the same person every single day. Years passed, and time painted soft silver into Nina's hair, but her eyes still sparkled with the same light she had the day she first met Lucas. The fifth room had grown into more than a bakery. It was a little piece of her heart, filled with warmth, laughter, and stories baked into every loaf of bread. One afternoon, a young woman entered the shop, holding a notebook and a shy smile. "Mrs. Wilson," she said, "my boyfriend's a doctor, and I think I'm falling in love. How did you know Dr. Wilson was the one?" Nina paused, her hands dusted with flour, and smiled gently. "I met him in a hospital," she said. "I lied about a headache just to see him again." The girl gasped, giggling. "You lied to a doctor?" Nina laughed softly. "Yes, but the truth came later. I told him I loved him, and that was the only truth that ever mattered." She handed the girl a small cupcake topped with sugar hearts and added, "Sometimes, love begins with a mistake, but if your heart is honest, it can end as a miracle." When the door closed behind the girl, Nina looked around her bakery, the photos on the wall, the coffee mugs, the old wedding picture of her and Lucas smiling in front of room 5. She whispered, as she did every morning, "Love doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real." Outside, the sea breeze carried the scent of fresh bread into the town square, and with it, a quiet reminder that love, like baking, takes time, patience, and a little bit of courage. Would you dare to follow your heart, even if it meant breaking a rule? If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more emotional English stories.